Good morning.
And welcome to a brand new day in Port Blair. So today we are out and about exploring the big city of Port Blair, and we plan to show you some very interesting places.
Our first stop for the day is the Cellular Jail. It is very important in this city because of the history it has, and also it portrays the freedom struggle the Indians went through.
Small. It's about 7.5 feet wide and 13.5 feet long, and it what looks like about 8 feet tall.
So every cell in this cellular jail has only two openings. One of them is a small window which is placed way at the top, from which you cannot see anything. It's just for ventilation. The other one is the door, and from the door all you can see is the back wall of the next row of jail. Nothing else. So this way none of the prisoners get to interact with each other, and everybody is isolated, and there is no chance for any prisoner to escape.
We are now on the second floor, and at the end of this particular line is a cell where Veer Savarkar stayed. So that particular cell has been turned into a museum of remnants for him.
This is how the prisoners were jailed. So these were the vessels in which the prisoners were served food. So basically these are rusted plates. They were just greased with oil. They couldn't even clean the plates, and they would get only rice porridge for food. So being at this cell, Veer Savarkar was forced to see the prisoners being tortured in the area below, and also see the prisoners being killed in the gallows around.
British discovered Andaman here in the late 1700s, and that began with the arrival of Captain Archibald Blair, after whom this particular capital city is still called as Port Blair today. So when the British came here, they discovered that this remote geographic nature of this place makes it ideal for a penal system that they could use to send people who are unfit to live on the mainland far away and keep them here in exile. So it was sometime in the 1800s that they decided to set up a large cellular jail where they could house the most dangerous of inmates. But eventually, and ironically, it turned out that this place became even more dangerous than anything else because of how inhumane the conditions were while people were jailed over here. So initially, the British administration decided that the budget for this would be around 5 lakh rupees of that time. But eventually, when the construction was completed several years later, it came up to around 7.5 lakh rupees in that time. What's interesting is the entire design of this place is so unique, and it was the only one of its kind in India at that time, and arguably so even in the British Empire. But if you've heard of something of this scale and of this unique design, do let us know in comments below for us to learn about. So this particular design had 7 spokes pretty much like a cycle's wheel on the land, and in the center was a watchtower. Each of these spokes was one row of jails. Initially, the construction included 2 levels of jails, but then, based on the budgeting the British administration did for potential freedom fighters, they ended up increasing that to a 3rd level. There were a total of 693 cells across all of these 7 spokes, and each of these spokes was varied in size. During the day, most of the inmates were allowed to go down and work, and allowed was just another way of saying that they were being punished. Once the jail was actually fully built and ready, and the British began to see more instances of mutiny and unrest on the mainland part of the country, they began to depute these political prisoners from there. When they would step out, the kind of work they were put to wasn't great either. So basically there were 2 jobs that they could do. One was to mill coconut oil using a hand-driven mill, much like the ones that cows used to run back in the mainland country. Or the other job that they could do was basically to put together all the coconut husks, pull out the coir on it, and either make rope or coir bundles with that. These 2 jobs were not very easy, considering 2 factors. One, the intense heat of the tropical climate over here, and second, the cruelty of the wardens who were policing them. A lot of these people were put to very inhuman conditions that, even though they petitioned against it many times, the prisoners were not given any kind of leeway, and the administration did nothing about it. So many people, because of these harsh conditions, even began dying right here on the prison. And it's a very gory and gruesome tale to really hear about. And this earned it the name Kalapani, because Kalapani in Hindi and Sanskrit for that matter mean the water of death. Many people who could not take it anymore over here either committed suicide or just jumped off the walls in the quest to escape. For many kilometers there was absolutely nothing inside, and it was just the ocean, so they would end up drowning in that water. So that is how this name just stuck forever, and is even now a reminder to the locals and many people who learn about this history that it was a very, very bad place to be. Things began to get a little better sometime in the late 1920s when many of these political prisoners were starting to be repatriated back to mainland India. All this happened with multiple mutinies, multiple protests here at the very site, and a lot of uproar back in the country as well. Eventually, the Savarkar brothers and many other freedom fighters were allowed to go back to India, whereas many of the Burmese freedom fighters as well, who were lodged here, and other criminals were also slowly deputed back to their places. It was only in 1943 that a very significant change happened, when the Japanese army invaded, and they basically took control of the whole of Andaman and began to massacre the British. Collateral damage happened in the way of a lot of Indians being killed as well, but the Japanese eventually retreated in 1945 as they began to lose World War II. In the meantime, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose happened to come here, speak with the Japanese, and then eventually take on the responsibility and administration of this island and this archipelago, and that is when he in fact declared independence. Independence first came here on 30th December 1943, much before mainland India declared its independence, and that is why they began to call this the first part of Azad Hind.
This cellular jail has been converted into a live museum now. They have maintained the place very well, and a lot of restoration work is also going on. The tickets to this place is very affordable, and you can even watch the sound and light show in the night. They narrate the entire history of this place, and you get to learn about it from a very interesting perspective.